Hello, and welcome to the Maybe I Can podcast. I'm your host, Debbie Weiss, and thank you so much for joining me today. All right, don't take both hands off the wheel, but raise your hand if you've ever felt exhausted. Yep, okay. If you can't see me, I have two hands up because this is something that, I think all of us realize, right? But here's the thing. One of the most dangerous things about exhaustion is that it rarely announces itself. It doesn't usually show up as, hey, I'm burnt out or I can't do anymore. Instead, it might sound like, I'm just busy or it's a crazy season or a crazy time right now. Maybe you tell yourself, I'll rest later. I'll rest when this is over. Or, this is one of my favorites, everyone feels this way. This is just normal. This is what being an adult is, just this familiar level of exhaustion. And eventually, exhaustion becomes something that we're so familiar with, we stop questioning it. It becomes so normal that it's just a part of who we are. It could be that you say to yourself, well, I've always been impatient. I've always been anxious, or I've always been overwhelmed. Now, maybe that's true, but did you ever stop to think that maybe you're not impatient, anxious, overwhelmed, fill in the blank? Maybe it's just that you're exhausted. I can remember so many years ago, oh gosh, I want to say maybe 15 years ago. It was Mother's Day, and I was in a season in my life of big caregiving. I have been going through a lot with my father, who I cared for 30 years, but at that time he was coming to the end of his life, and the caregiving had gotten much more intense and stressful. And I was, like so many of us, running around and taking care of my business and my job and my kids and what my older son, who had some special needs, needed to deal with, that I had to deal with at school. Anyhow, I was exhausted, but I didn't know it. And it was Mother's Day. I don't know, not that I was expecting any big gift. It wasn't about the gift, but I had talked to my husband so many times about the fact that I wasn't looking for an expensive gift or anything like that. I just wanted my kids to understand that you need to think about other people. And of course, not that you should wait for a specific day, a holiday, a birthday, whatnot. But certainly on those type of days, they should be aware that they need to think a little bit in advance. What can I do that's special? And maybe it was make mom a card or breakfast in bed or buy her a darn lollipop. I don't care what it was. The idea behind it was what they needed to learn about being selfless and about thinking of other people. And that particular Mother's Day, of course, those things didn't happen. And when I learned of that morning, and I think we were getting ready to go to my cousin's, as we do every Mother's Day, I lost it. I mean, lost it, not even in a little way, not just getting angry and having a little outburst. Nope. I went literally off the deep end. I was screaming and crying, saying things and making sounds I didn't even know were in me. And my kids, my husband, they were trying to apologize. They were looking at me in shock. I think they were afraid of what was happening to me. I was afraid of what was happening to me. And I stormed out of the house. I got in my car as I was screaming, as I was crying, completely a dumb idea to get behind the wheel. And I think I realized that when I peeled out of my driveway like a crazy person. And thankfully, I realized what I was doing, and I drove less than a half a block away to the park that's behind my house, pulled in there, parked in an area of the parking lot where no one else was parked, and for 20 minutes proceeded to cry hysterically, scream, bang the steering wheel. It was unbelievable, the emotion that came out of me until I was completely exhausted. I didn't have another tear left. I didn't have any voice left. I had absolutely nothing left. And in the end, was it really about Mother's Day? Well, yeah, it was in a small part about Mother's Day, but it was really about so much more. It was the buildup of that stress, the emotional overload that I had been carrying for way too long. Years of just carrying too much of everything, too much responsibility, too much stress, too much managing everything else. And it was about the exhaustion that had gone unaddressed for way too long. The event wasn't the cause, it just revealed what was going on underneath. And sometimes what looks like overreaction, which this clearly was, is actually a nervous system that has run out of room. There's no more room. You have filled that nervous system, your nervous system, to the max. And that stress of that Mother's Day, it had nowhere else to go. Has something like this ever happened to you? I know it's happened to me other times in my life. That Mother's Day, though, stands out in particular because the reaction was just not even close to what it should have been. So let's talk about the 4 stages of hidden exhaustion. Stage 1, the push through. You might notice you're tired, but you tell yourself, I'll be fine. I just need to get through this week. I don't have time for rest. I have too much to do right now. So you're aware of it, but you're just pushing through. That's stage 1. Stage 2, you adapt. This becomes normal to you. You have less patience, less energy, less joy in your life. And unfortunately, at this point, you just even stop noticing. Then stage 3. This is clearly where I was on Mother's Day. This is reactivity. This is where little things feel huge. You cry unexpectedly. You snap at people. Oh boy, that was something I was doing all the time for so many years. You're irritated by everything. Ugh, those things maybe in your partner that you didn't maybe notice before. All you can do is notice those things. Little ridiculous things, right? I can remember thinking like, why does my husband have to make that noise every time he eats an iceberg? You know what I'm saying. We've all done it. And that irritates you beyond. I am sure that maybe you recognize yourself because I think that so many of us have gotten to that phase of reactivity. And maybe you don't even realize it or you don't even stop then. And you move on to stage 4, which is disconnection. And this is the scary one. You stop being present. You just feel numb, flat, detached, robotic. You're functioning, but you're not really living. It's a terrible place to be. Most people think that exhaustion means, oh, I fall asleep everywhere, right? I sit down for 5 minutes and the next thing you know, my eyes are closed and I'm snoring. Exhaustion, I think most of us equate it with being physically tired, and it certainly can be that. But it can also be other types of exhaustion. It could be emotional. Like I said, crying easily, losing your patience, feeling resentful. Or it can show up as mental exhaustion. You have brain fog, decision fatigue, like I can't make one more decision. How many times have I felt that way? It could have been as simple as, what do you want to do for dinner? Really? You want me to also decide what we're going to do for dinner? I remember freaking out at my husband over this. Can't you make one decision? Because I can't make one more decision. A clear sign of mental exhaustion. And of course, overwhelm. I feel like overwhelm should be my middle name. I've felt it so many times in my life. And then there's physical exhaustion, not having energy, not sleeping well, waking up feeling not rested, drained all the time. And then lastly, there's that spiritual exhaustion of that disconnection, feeling flat, unable to find joy. You can look perfectly normal on the outside, right? That you're functioning, you're handling it all, you've got this, and still feel deeply exhausted and depleted on the inside. Now, one of my biggest struggles isn't recognizing that I'm tired. Sometimes it is. But for me, it's believing I deserve to rest. And then, even now, when I think I might need to rest, I immediately start questioning myself. I don't trust myself. Maybe it's because for so long, I wasn't really tuning into how I was feeling. And so then I start having an argument with myself. Do I really need to rest? Or am I just being lazy? Am I making excuses because I got this thing to do and I really don't feel like doing it? And I'm telling myself, I'm exhausted, I need to rest, I should do it later. Am I avoiding this thing that I'm not looking forward to? Can I just push through? I mean, I'm telling you, I can turn the idea of taking into a nap into a courtroom trial where I am the attorney for both sides. It's insane. It is so difficult for me to accept that, yes, it's okay. You need rest. And I shouldn't feel guilty about taking it, and neither should you. So instead of asking, do I deserve rest? Instead, ask yourself, what evidence do I have that I need rest? And that might include many of the symptoms that we've been discussing. You're snapping at people more than usual. You have brain fog. You notice that you're having emotional reactions that don't match the reaction that you should be having. You're losing patience. You don't have a lot of joy. You feel resentment. You have difficulty concentrating. So how do you decide? Am I tired or just resisting something? So resistance is not wanting to do one specific thing, where exhaustion is not wanting to do anything. If I don't want to write an email, let's face it, that's probably resistance. But if I don't want to do anything at all, the idea of doing anything is just too much for me, that might be exhaustion. Honestly, right now, I am set to go on a vacation, which should be a wonderful thing, but it's not a restful vacation. And I've got a lot of competing thoughts going on in my head, feeling guilty. This is not the time to be doing something like this. I need to be working more and not relaxing and not taking a break. Why am I doing this to myself? I'm feeling guilty for taking the time to rest. Now, this vacation isn't going to be resting physically, but it's definitely going to allow my mind to rest, to let me put all of those daily struggles, problems, to-do lists on the side and clear my mind mentally, my stress levels, all the things. So why am I ignoring this? Have you ever done that? Why do we ignore what we actually need? I think that sometimes we equate it to what our worth is. We think productivity equals worthiness, and being busy means we're successful. It's kind of like this badge of honor, right? Oh, I am so busy. If you say you're not busy, then what's wrong with you? You must not be accomplishing enough. And maybe the idea that rest must be earned. I think for many of us, the real issue isn't the exhaustion, it's our relationship with the rest. Allowing ourselves to rest. We become so comfortable thinking that we're earning our worth through what we do. So what about you? Maybe you're like many of us. You're a working woman and you sit down after work and you're exhausted. But instead of resting, what do you say? Oh my goodness. Now I have to start cleaning. And then in your mind, I'm thinking, my goodness, do I ever get a chance to rest? No, there is always something else to do. And I can't come home and just sit down and relax. No, I've got to go to the next thing on my to-do list. And now I've got to start cleaning. And then you wonder why you spend the rest of the night and probably the next day and the next day feeling so irritable. You're not giving yourself the opportunity to take it a little easy. You deserve it. Or maybe you're the parent who you finally get your kids to bed. How nice it felt when they were finally not only in bed, but asleep. And instead of taking that time to relax and maybe even connect with your partner, you're like, nope, now it's the perfect time to do laundry, check my emails, do the dishes, because now rest feels unproductive. I finally got a chance to take care of these other things. I think it's always about taking care of the next thing and the next thing. And let's face it, there's always going to be a next thing and a next thing. I think we have to start thinking long term, because if you never allow yourself to rest, believe me, you're going to hit a wall. And I just hope that wall comes sooner rather than later, because when you allow it to take over your life, I think the crash and burn can be pretty darn big. All right, let's go back to another example. What if you're an empty nester and for the first time in years, you have free time? But instead of filling it with things that you like and enjoy, you feel guilty. So you fill every minute with something productive because sitting still, it feels uncomfortable to you. How about being the caregiver, as we all know is near and dear to my heart? A free afternoon suddenly appears. Oh my goodness, it's like striking gold. And instead of resting, I've got this free time. Now I can run these errands, go to these appointments or set these appointments. I can organize whatever needs organizing because there's always something that needs organizing. And then we wonder why we never feel refreshed. We don't allow ourselves the chance to get refreshed. Or maybe you're a widow, just like me, and life has finally settled a bit. I mean, here I am, 3.5 years into being a widow. Still can't believe it. But sitting quietly means feeling some emotions that are still hard. 3.5 years later, I would think in my mind I'd be past it. Nope. These emotions still bubble up. And so when I'm busy, I don't think about it as much. Staying busy feels safer. And so that's what I do. I just go from thing to thing because when I sit quietly, I remember. I reflect on how different my life is and not the way I want it to be. So now the key is we don't want to hit that breaking point. What do we do before you hit the breaking point? Well, the first step is, as always, name it, become aware of it. What is it that I'm actually feeling? I'm feeling depleted, exhausted. That doesn't mean I'm lazy or I'm weak or I'm a failure. Nope. It just means you're depleted, nothing more. Once you recognize that, the next step is to stop asking, how do I do more? No. When you're aware you're depleted, clearly the next question isn't, how do I do more? But what is actually draining me? Because typically it's not just one thing, right? That brings me to step 3. Look for where your energy is leaking. Maybe you're overcommitted, or you're a people pleaser, just like me, a recovering people pleaser. I'm still recovering, giving too much and trying to please everyone else. Maybe you're losing energy through poor boundaries or constant worrying. Maybe unresolved resentment. All that time, that doesn't feel like energy. But focusing on who or what you resent, it causes your energy to leak. Step 4 is restore before you figure out how to optimize, meaning don't create a giant plan. Start small, as I always like to say. Take a walk or a nap. Sit down and read. Sit outside. As I'm recording this, it's the beginning of June. The weather is gorgeous. This is when we should be taking advantage of it. Call a friend. Do some type of movement, whatever works for you. Yoga, dancing, or maybe just sit quietly. That's okay. That's actually a good thing. So I want you to reflect and ask yourself some questions. And whether you answer these by writing in a journal, you think about them, whatever works for you. But I want you to ask yourself, when did exhaustion become normal for me? What signs have I been ignoring? What evidence do I have that I might actually need rest? What is depletion actually costing me? And lastly, if someone I loved felt exactly the way I feel right now, would I tell them to keep pushing or would I tell them to rest? And I love that one because so often I use this technique of thinking, well, would I tell a friend that? When I hear myself talking to myself a certain way, it's a great reflection for me to realize, my goodness, I would never talk to someone else that way. So why am I doing that to myself? So remember, if someone I love felt me exactly the way I feel right now, Would I tell them to keep pushing or would I tell them to rest? For next week, my challenge to you is every time you think, I should just push through, pause and ask yourself, do I need discipline right now or do I need rest? And then listen. Listen honestly. That Mother's Day moment taught me something important. My reaction wasn't the problem, it was the signal. The goal isn't to become someone who never reaches exhaustion. The goal is to recognize it before it becomes your new normal. The fact that you're questioning whether you need rest might actually be evidence that you've been pushing for too long. I don't know about you, but that line really resonates with me. I so appreciate you listening. I hope that you got something in this episode, that you allow yourself the time to rest. And honestly, talking it out to you helps me because as I tell you about things to do, it's just a reminder to myself. So thank you for that. Thank you for listening. Make it a great week and go out there and get some much needed rest. See you next week.